Okay, I was reading 1 Corinthians 15 today, and I was loving this section here, kind of between verse 21 and verse 27, 28. Slide this down. So it's so cool. Paul is talking about Jesus as the first fruits, the first one that dies and the first one that's raised again, because he's trying to convince the people that there's going to be a resurrection. Because there was a lot of there was a discussion about that, right? The Sadducees thought there wasn't a physical resurrection, and the Pharisees thought there was, and so people would be kind of like wondering what the deal was. So Paul was discussing this, but I thought it was really cool how he says in verse 24, "Then cometh the end, when he shall have delivered up the kingdom to God," meaning God the Father. Oh, even the Father, yeah, he clarifies that. So Christ is going to deliver up the kingdom that he has saved to his Father, right? When he, Christ, shall have put down all rule and all authority and all power. So Christ comes the first time, he makes his sacrifice, and then he has to, then he dies and goes back into heaven, and then he completes this process of putting down all rule, all authority, and all power when he comes the second time. The first time, he just resolved the problem of death and hell, which are kind of big problems. But eventually, he's going to sweep up all the rest and finish everything up. He says, "For he must reign till he hath put all enemies under his feet." And I would say that's the millennium, right? He's going to come back and just straighten everything out, clarify everything, organize his kingdom, or put it in order. Isaiah talks about that in Isaiah 9, when he says, the Lord's going to come and he's going to be the wonderful counselor, all that stuff. And he says, of his government there will be no end, and he's going to establish his kingdom, but first he says he's going to order it. So he's going to clarify everything and put everything how he wants it. Okay? But he says, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. And that's for us, right? Death is going to be overcome last, because he's already done that. But then he says, he hath put all things, for he hath put all things under his feet. But when he saith all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted, which did put all things under him. So God put all things under Christ's feet. And then Christ organizes it, orders it, establishes it, gets everything set up. And then in verse 28, "And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all." So he's basically saying, once Christ has finished his work here on the earth and done everything that was the Father asked him to do, then he'll go back to the Father, and he will give all things into the Father's control again. He'll return everything that he has had authority and power over for the whole history of this earth. And then Christ will become subject unto him that put all things under him. So Christ will be subject to the Father again. And made me think of Matthew 5:16, where he talks about we do good works so that we can glorify God. Christ being the epic example of that Christ did all things, and he did it to the glory of God the Father. And in the end, God's plan, which he had, which was to send Christ to do all these things, is completed. And the Son returns the glory to the Father. The Father's glorified all in all. And all of the works of his hands, all of his children, are saved in some way, whatever they were willing to accept. Whether they were willing to accept Christ, his testimony, his authority and submit to him, and then be found in the family of God, and be returned to God for eternal salvation. So I just love that. I hadn't really gotten to enjoy these verses about. I love that Christ was saying constantly through his ministry, God's above me. God is. I do everything he says. I do his will, and then we do the will of Christ, because Christ is the emissary of God. And then when we return, we're all in order, and even Christ bows to the Father, which is just the coolest, because it's just such a good example to us, right? We aren't really very good at submitting to authority, to God's authority, or anybody's authority. Honestly, nobody likes to be told no or be told what to do. But there's big rewards for submitting to the authority of God, and it's really important. And even Christ just magnificently submits to the Father, and it glorifies the Father, who then gives us shares with his glory with us. And it's just, it's a beautiful cycle. So I want to share that.